Hello, I'm Mike Belcher, HP's Director of EdTech Innovation. Thank you for joining us in another series of our videos built around topics relevant here to the COVID-19 crisis and how do we truly prepare for distance learning. In this session, we're going to talk about learning and instructional continuity. And so I'm going to jump into some content here. And we hope this will be helpful to have a little dialogue around this particular topic. Again, this isn't meant to be prescriptive, but really to help start discussions, hopefully inside your K-12 district or your higher education institution around how do we prepare for this new normal, right? And how do we prepare not knowing what we're going to have for classrooms or not classrooms this fall or possibly into spring. So thinking about this continuity planning, we think is going to be so important. This teaching in a new normal environment is going to require all sorts of new skills, new sets of resources, and then a whole host of challenges. We think spending the time in this as quickly as possible will have huge benefits as you really begin to roll this out and are truly ready for the fall, no matter what happens, whether we're able to deliver traditional classroom environments or whether we are still learning and teaching from home. So we'll start off with this, this idea of creating a plan and devising this instructional continuity plan, really thinking about what is the worst case scenario. And I think we have to look at this in each district and each higher education institution in the unique way that matters to you and in your community, right? Each community may have different challenges. And so thinking about this, we need to kind of work our way backwards. What happens if we aren't able to deliver classroom environments this summer? I think most of our institutions are already planning on delivering virtual instruction for summer school, but this fall semester may be at risk as well, right? We don't know if there are going to be challenges to allowing folks to congregate, allowing students to group together, what that might look like. We may be able to do that, but if another round of this disease or another version of this disease comes forward, how do we be prepared if we have to move back home and self-quarantine? So working your way backwards, we think, is incredibly important. In fact, the most important thing we think we can do right now is really focus on our faculty and our teachers. Because this is so different and so unique from what we traditionally do in instruction, we think we really need to have a well laid out plan for how we're going to deliver a classroom. And we think it almost has to be in a calendar format, so that it's very easy for our parents and our students to follow along, and that we have well thought out plans as far as what's going to be instructional time, where we're actually maybe doing something virtual like we're doing right now, or whether it's self-recorded content or self-directed content or projects that we're giving our students, and what does that look like. So we think some of this needs to be, what do we set for strategies for that virtual instruction time? It's really hard to be on camera for 7 or 8 hours straight. It's almost impossible and very difficult for students to sit through that amount of time in front of a screen, right? It just does not make sense. So we think some of the strategies you might want to start to think through are, maybe there's 2 or 3 40, 60-minute sort of sessions that we do throughout the day. Maybe there's one to get the day kicked off, right? And get our students all on task, get a chance to see each other, and really kind of get prepared. Then we break off into self-directed or project-based sort of learning. That gives the faculty member or instructor time to do one-off instruction where that might be needed, or to do small group instruction with different teams in between. And then do at least one follow-up session at the end of the day to kind of recap, get students prepared for what we'll be doing in the next day. Scheduling that office time, we think, is also really good, right? Where if we do need help and support from our students or from parents, right, in K-12, so that you can make sure we reach out and ensure students are getting what they need. That idea of small group or project teams we think is truly going to be valuable. And this idea around being able to do project-based learning, this crisis might be that impetus to do more project-based learning, which is typically some of the best learning, because you're not learning about the theory and only the theory, you're practicing that theory in a real world sort of a project. And then we know our faculty are going to need training on using these virtual tools, what sort of other instructional pieces or supplemental materials that we're going to be involved in. So a lot of work needs to be done on the front end to think through how do we wish to do this in all of our schools. So faculty first, and I think if we do the good job and we spend the time this summer really getting prepared with that curriculum plan and lay it out, help our instructors think through the use of these tools and provide that function, will be really good. Next, I think then we've got to start thinking about the parents and the students, right? So what are the educational technologies we're going to use? Do we have internet access challenges? And there are definitely, you know, depending on your market, it could be rural, it could be an issue with socioeconomics. There could be a multitude of issues, right? 25% of our students in the US are Title I students, meaning they live in poverty. And in many cases, they don't have access to a device or internet, or the internet is a phone and someone in the household may be using that for their work, right? Mom and dad may be using that, or their guardian. How do we make sure that we get access for those students? And we think the CARES Act may be a big component of that. I'll do a session on the CARES Act again to make sure that we leverage that, particularly for our K-12 students, but also for our Pell Grant students in higher education. In many cases, they are in a very similar boat right now. The funding that's coming from CARES aimed at our college students who are typically under that Pell Grant or low socioeconomic component, they're having challenges with finances. That's what those funds are geared at, and we need to make sure that we're aiming our plans there as well. How do you use this technology? Helping the parents use some of this, right, is going to be, we think, very, very important. How do we submit work? How do we grade that work and get back to our students? So we got to think through some of those components and make sure it's very simple for students to grasp and understand how all of that is going to work. And if they need help and support, whether that's technical or other aspects, do we have that thought out, and is that pulled forward so that a parent knows where to reach out, a student knows where to reach out if they need that help or support? So first part of this, we think we've got to aim at faculty, we've got to aim at parents and students. And then next is really diving into that whole deep layer, right? There may be challenges where certain grade levels or certain students, you won't be able to deploy technology. It just doesn't make sense, right? If we think about pre-K through grade 2, providing devices there may not be the right sort of choice. And so what are some of the printed materials, video components? What are those resources that we could make available? And then how do we pull a plan together to push those out to our students? Is that something that we deploy with meals? Is it something that we build these packages and every month they get dropped on doorsteps? That's a lot of work to think through. How are we going to deliver that? But some of those resources may be very, very valuable. So I think we have to look at that. I touched on this in the last sort of section, but I think this is a great opportunity for us to think through projects, and maybe to think through projects of how students can work together collaboratively on projects using some of these online learning tools, right? Using things like Zoom and Teams and Hangouts and whatnot, in a way for them to work together collaboratively on projects, share what they're doing. That's how we operate in the private sector, right? And so giving students this chance to work in the same environment is going to be really valuable, and will be a skill that they will need as they go forward. And I can't prioritize this enough. Self-directed resources and materials will be an absolute necessity. There's just no way we can deliver on-camera sort of virtual instruction all day long. It will break our teachers. And so thinking about what are all those resources, what are all the supplemental tools? If someone wants to jump off and go forward, where do we put those resources available, and how do we line them up inside of an LMS or a lesson calendar, a Google Classroom or a OneNote classroom? how do we layer this out so that it's very easy for both students and parents to know where they go and what's really the work that they should be focused on. Really, really important in this kind of virtual environment. One of the other sort of great resources is how do we bring our teachers together? Does it make sense for us maybe before the school year ends and summer begins to start to pull our teachers together in cohorts and get some of these plans pulled together, allow them to brainstorm and think through what are some great resources that are available, and that as you are pulling these plans together, that they are part of it and they feel like this is part of their new normal, right? So bringing them into this planning will be super, super valuable. In one of our other sessions, we'll be sharing some free curriculum tools, free training on how to use these tools. And so those might be valuable as well, including a session on how to utilize the best sort of virtual teaching strategies done by Digital Promise. We are hosting a webinar there on April 21st. That'll be recorded, and so you can also leverage some great resources there. We do think it's also important to maybe ask parents to join a session. And I've heard some really great success stories from my daughter as well, as a 4th grade teacher in Austin, Texas, said that one of the first things they did was start to bring together utilizing Zoom with the student and the parent together and doing one-off sessions to make sure you get a chance for the student to see your instructor, for the parents to know how this works. And so in many cases, this may be the first time for some of our parents who have ever used a PC, a Chromebook, may never have utilized a virtual environment like this. And so helping them feel comfortable with this is really good. So these are some of those key components. We know there's so many other moving pieces, but we know that, hey, if we're going to deliver a really great experience, if we're going to have a great continuity plan, these are just some of those pieces that we know need to be part of your plan. Please reach out to us if we can help in any way. I hope this was helpful as a discussion starter and point. If you need access to any of our materials, if you have some other ideas on videos, please reach out to me. Again, Mike Belcher at mike.belcher@hp.com. Thank you again so much.